Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Gaming Podcast. I'm your host Stu, and joining me today is nobody. I'm going solo. Now look, we all know life can be a little bit dark, a little bit challenging, so I'm here to bring you a little bit of joy, a little bit of light. Unfortunately, Brad can't make it today, for reasons that I'm sure they'll go into on the next podcast. But yeah, so what have I been playing? Well, I've been playing some good stuff, I can tell you. The first thing I've been playing is a game called Ankou, which is a fairly unusual name for a start. I don't know where it comes from. I'm probably a little bit culturally backward, not knowing. But yeah, it's a kind of roguelite exploration, crafting adventure. So if you think a little bit like Tunic or even slightly like the Zeldas, a little bit of Diablo thrown in, you kind of go around a little level, like a map, and you need to defeat certain things within that map to progress. The tweak to the normal formula being that you have to scavenge stuff from your environment. And these are things like charcoal, iron, wood, fabric, all sorts of things like that. And you've got a menu that you go into and you can craft stuff on the fly. And you have to do this because the enemy's getting more numerous and more powerful, and you have to collect souls to upgrade as well. So, that sounds like comparatively normal, understandable stuff. What it sets it apart a little bit in a good way is the fact that when you collect things, you have to do it as quickly as you can because you're obviously most of the time under attack. And there's a kind of system like Gears of War where there's a sweet spot where you press the button to collect and then press again in the little sweet spot to collect the most efficiently and quickly that you can, and each item type that you collect has a different cadence. So when you're collecting iron, it's got a long bar with a tiny little window in the middle of where you need to press a second time to get the most efficient collection, whereas just basic stuff like mushrooms, which you collect to create health potions, have a very big window, and it's very quick and it's very easy to do. So it's really quite clever, and the combat is nice enough. It lacks a little bit of impact. I would say maybe a little bit more kind of screen shake or reaction off things to give it a bit of heft would be nice. But minor grumble that. It is generally, fun. There's lots of different enemy types. They all have different types and patterns of attack. They have ranged attacks and melee and magical, and it's nicely designed too. It's very pretty. It's got a kind of like a cartoonish, painterly kind of look to it. Very good, very, very attractive. What really jumps out as well when you're starting it is the soundtrack, which kind of reminds me of, if you remember Hush, the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it's all entirely, obviously, almost entirely, without any speech or dialogue, and there's lots and lots of musical stings. It's all very violin-y and cello, and there's a lot of that in it. There's a lot of that, and it's kind of got that same kind of witchy feel to it in a way, which is enhanced by the fact that you're in the woods. In the first map, at least. I've played it for a good few hours, but not got off the first map because I'm a bit rubbish. But so it's got a good vibe to it, a little bit spooky, a little bit Halloween-y, a lovely crafting system. You can go in at any point and make anything that is available to you. I won't go into too many things, but obviously there's crafting around your weaponry, your defences, your speed, things like that, as you'd expect. But there's some nice tweaks to it as well that are worth discovering for yourself, and they're always available. It just depends on what you've collected. So yeah, I was quite surprised by it in a really pleasant way, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm definitely going to carry on with it. I think it's early access at the moment, and it's not been released at time of recording, I don't think, but I will check. But yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So it's called Ankou, and it's a kind of, as I say, roguelike adventure game. I'm playing it on Steam. It plays really well on my PC. It doesn't perform brilliantly on the Steam Deck. I can get it to run fairly stably at 40 frames per second, but it does drop to 30. I don't really understand why. I've not looked into what engine it uses. I would have a stab and a guess at Unity, but it's, yeah, it for the size of the game, I think it's only a few hundred meg, and the graphics, which are pleasant but not pushing the system, I would say there's not really any reason for it not to be hitting 60 or over. So that's a little bit disappointing for the deck, as it suits the deck for play as well. But anyway, that aside, nice game, check it out. So yeah, the second game I want to talk about is Xenotilt. Now, this is a pinball game, and I absolutely adore pinball. I'm not the pinball expert. That is your favourite pinball obsessive Brad, and they'll talk about it when they're on next. But yeah, I love everything about it. I love the weight, the heft of real pinball. I love how it's kind of repurposed, sort of mechanical engineering for fun. You know, there's a lot of that with original arcade games, you know, when you're going back to, I suppose, right, fairs and circuses way back from the Victorian era, when they started to try and create things that were, you know, based around electricity, but they also used physics, and they had a lot of bright lights and noise, and then they brought in like calliopes or calliopes, I don't know how it's pronounced. You know, they brought in zithers, they brought in all of this stuff that was fun, flea circuses, you know, that kind of mechanical thing, and it's got that weight, heft, physics that's just really fun to interact with, and the noise and the clatter, it should be annoying, but it isn't. It's actually really exciting. There's something about it that's just totally unique with, you know, well, there's Pachinko, which is pretty much, you know, based on the same principles, but you know what I mean. It's that kind of defying physics, using something that's noisy, clattery. I suppose it's almost as if you're doing a job that you thought as a young boy, and hopefully these days young girls, of like driving a great big digger, or, you know, piloting an airplane, or running a steam train. That kind of, yeah, it's a job, yeah, it's got a mechanical function, but it's all about the excitement of transferring that mechanical control into power and movement. And that was pretty deep to go into for when talking about a pinball game, but you know, that's where it comes from. And I've not really got into them massively, and my experience is like around the console side, and I was like first introduced to them with Alien Crush and Devil Crash on the PC Engine. I started playing those probably in the early 90s, a few years after they'd come out, and it's where the theme really was the thing that drew me in, because they're good pinball games. Possibly you might even class them as great pinball games, but they're not kind of like, oh my god, you know, this just changes the world. But they're fun and they're attractive, but it's the theme. And obviously, you know, one is a fantasy theme and one is a sci-fi alien horror theme, and that's where Xenotilt comes in. So Xenotilt and Demon's Tilt, which was its predecessor, they mimic those two games. They're like spiritual successors, they're kind of homages, but they take things a lot further. And what it brings to the table, haha, that you don't have in real physical pinball, and this doesn't mean it's better, it's just different, is things like you can have little guns pop up. Like, it's got this mechanic in Xenotilt where if you manage to balance the ball on your flipper, you can push down on the stick and it will fire off these guns, and destroying these little critters, these irritating little creatures that get in the way, will score you extra points. There's a little bit of a risk reward in that. Can't be done. Oh, I suppose it could be done in real life, but it would cost hundreds of thousands to put into the table. But what you couldn't do is have these reactive objects that you can destroy with the ball or with the guns. And they do that a lot in these games. They have these critters that go across the table, you know, little sci-fi objects that you destroy and that give you points. And, you know, there's physics around them. And I recognise I'm going into a massively long rant about what constructs a very good modern video game pinball table. So I'll shut myself up. But suffice to say that all of that works really well. The graphics are fantastic. I love them. I like them a lot more than those in Demon's Tilt, which were good. But this has got a kind of synth wavy, kind of cyberpunk, but not kind of aesthetic to it. It's got a very industrial, silly, sexy, kind of silly, violent look to it. Like a grim but excitingly chromed sheen, if you like. You know, it is very masculine, it's very kind of testosterone-y, but it kind of works. It's very silly. Hopefully nobody takes it too seriously. There are a bit too many jiggly boobs for my liking, but you know, comes with the territory sometimes, so I just kind of ignore them. But there's some really excellent stuff, like if you look at the artwork, there's like a skull face and there's a tiger face and things like that you destroy to reveal other things underneath them, and that's a very common trope in video game pinball. And it works really, really well here. So it's, as I say, got a bit of a synthwave influence, got a bit of a cyberpunk influence. Some tropes I don't like, but mostly don't care. And yeah, really amazing looking game that doesn't strain the hardware, works great on the Steam Deck. Jump in, jump out. You know, your average game will probably last, if you're at my skill level, about 10 minutes. If you're at Brad's, probably more like an hour to 2 hours. But honestly, I really do suck at these things. But I don't care, because I can jump in and jump out and still really enjoy it like I can with Tetris. So yeah, if you like pinball or the idea of video game pinball, you've got to have this. This is the best, for me, that I've played, fantasy themed and stretching what you can do, because it's got other things like teleporting the ball and lasers being fired at your pinball and things like that. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to ruin, there's lots of little tweaks and surprises that are there for the fun. If you like the sounds of that, that's massively over the top, senses destroying kind of video game pinball, you've got to get it. It's going to be really, really high up my games of the year lists, at least so far, because I'm enjoying every moment I've had with it. It really is at that level for me. And the final thing I want to chat about today is another game that I've bought, because I've really splashed out this month. It's just been a little bit of a hefty month in terms of releases of stuff that I'm really looking forward to, than there was. And I splashed the cash, but it is worth it. And that one is just a brief chat around Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. So obviously this is a continuation of the Mecha series that started 1997, I think, from Software. So, the guys who do all the Soulsborne games, Demon's Souls and Dark Souls and Elden Ring and all that caper. Not traditionally games that I like at all. Known for being pretty brutally difficult, having very specific ways of playing them. Very, very challenging and very dark, thematically dark and often visually very dark. So I don't like those games. I didn't like Sekiro. Why did I buy this? Well, I love mecha games, or mech games, whatever you want to call them. I love them. I really, really do enjoy them. I don't think there are very many that really scratch that itch for me. My favourites... My favourite of recent years, and I say recent in inverted commas, is Demon X Machina, which came out on the Switch and then on the PC. I'm not sure if it hit any other platforms. Really good, beautiful to look at, great fun. And going from that to this in the space of about 3 years or whatever, it's a bit of a cultural change, because it is so very From. Oh, it's very From. So really hard. You have to engage the game on the way that it makes you have to play it. You can't just go into a From Software game and apply previous knowledge. I mean, some, obviously, but the cadence, the speed, the tempo of attack, the way that stamina bars work, the way that bosses, because most of their games are kind of focused on a kind of boss mentality rather than having the majority of your encounters be against smaller enemies. They tend to be the duration and the difficulty and the challenge comes in facing these massive bosses that have complex patterns, and they go over several stages and stuff. And when you get used to that tempo, you really click with it. The thing that repels some people and fascinates others is, how long can I cope with having to get into that mindset whilst it's punishing me before I get the reward? And it puts a lot of people off, and it attracts a lot of people, and mostly it puts me off. For this one so far, it's got a few quality of life things that I appreciate, like you can heal, and you have reasonable checkpointing. It's still brutally hard. Will it be something that I love? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to give it quite a lot of time. I'm willing to put a good few hours into it. I've put about 2 into it so far. I'm going to give it at least 10 hours before I decide whether I'm going to keep it or not. Bought it on PS5 because I haven't bought a PS5 game for about God knows how long. So yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping to have a good conversation with somebody. I'm hoping to bring a guest in to chat about it, hopefully next week, maybe the week after. So yeah, we shall see. So that's very early impressions. It's kind of what you expect. The only thing I will say that I haven't mentioned so far are the visuals, which are so far quite underwhelming. Obviously we didn't expect it to look very next gen, and it doesn't. It's very previous gen. It's very PS4. Runs nicely though. It's got a pretty much stable 60 frames per second, but visually it's all apart from a few kind of blur effects and some nice particle effects, it's pretty staid looking, and aesthetically it's pretty grey. It's pretty grey. But yeah, apart from that, we'll see. It's a wait and see. I think a lot of people are going to love it. It does bring up the thing of the internet binary again, like something is either perfect and brilliant and flawless and amazing and you've got to buy into it, or oh my god, this is terrible, this is rubbish, why would anyone play this? And I really don't like that kind of critical thinking, because it isn't critical thinking, it's just reaction, and it's just based on a internet clickbaity culture that I don't agree with. And there's been a lot of this binary in the lead up to its release of is it going to be good or is it going to be a failure? And then it's oh yeah, we've hit the Metacritic 80 or 90 or whatever, and tons of great reviews, and it's well, there's room for some nuance, you can give this game a 65, or give it it's good with a little thumbs up, and that's fine. You don't have to ally yourself and attach your emotions and invest in it to the point where it's either got to change your life or it's got to ruin it. And I'm happy to come on here and say, look, visually it's not brilliant, I'm enjoying it so far, but I don't know if it's going to blow my skirt up, without it being a big deal. So if I was going to give any advice, it would be, feel confident in your opinion, and don't feel like you have to align yourself with a hate or a love. You can be indifferent. You can feel that something is average. You can say that it's not the next big thing, but still enjoy it. These things are fine. Anyway, there you go. That's my philosophy for the day. Lucky you. Now, to finish off, I'm going to do a couple of the Q&A questions, just to leave things on a slightly lighter note and, a bit more personal note as well. So let's have a go. I'll bring them up. Here we go, in real time, just so you can feel the realism. Feel how we do all these things off the cuff. What we do, genuinely, as we've said in the past. Brad and I just do everything off the cuff. It's just that we're very happy to just spill all of our verbal diarrhea, and we're used to doing things without any preparation. So, right, okay. So, here's one. If you could choose to do anything for a day, what would it be? That's a really good question. I really like this question because you don't often think about things outside of your work a lot, really, other than what can I fit in that will allow me to get home in time to service all of my corporate overlords' needs after the weekend, or in the evening or whatever. But Yeah, I've recently got quite obsessed with the idea of a hot air balloon trip. Really, really want to do that. It really appeals to me. The sort of, comparative quiet, the verticality, but not being in a plane, the exposure to the outside. It's just something that seems really kind of beautiful about it. And more and more over the years, it's kind of, it's got into my head as something I really want to do. But I've also, in a more kind of accessible and cheaper way, I've bought like an inflatable kayak, and I intend to go on the sea with it, which sounds like a recipe for, instant kind of unaliving myself. But I've also bought a flotation thing, and I'm going to hopefully get a little bit of instruction on how to do it in person. So I'm looking forward to doing that, because I live near the sea now, so I want to give that a go. My wife's, one of her dreams is to ride with a team of huskies, on a sled and all of that. So I would love to do that. That'd be really nice. But you kind of your bog standard, what can I do in a day? Just somewhere that I go that's pretty. It honestly, genuinely fills me with a lot of joy. Just going somewhere really, really nice. It doesn't have to be anything special or commercial. And we talked, a couple of weeks ago about how I like liminal spaces. Just basic getting you to A to B spaces. I like them. So anything like that. But yesterday, we went to the Dovey Osprey project, which is, as you'd expect, to see ospreys, which was amazing, as it always is, and that's down near Machynlleth. And then we went to Dolgelly, which is on the way, which is a very beautiful Welsh town. And that was unplanned. It was fantastic. So I love doing stuff like that. I just want to be out there and doing things like that. But I'm in here speaking to you instead, because I care about you. Anyway, there you go. So that's it. And another one, very, very quickly. If you could sing anything at karaoke, what would you do? What would you sing? Well, I've actually done karaoke a couple of times. Not loads of times, but a couple. And the most memorable one was in Portugal. Me and my then best friend we were on holiday together, and we went to this bar, and it was pretty much deserted. It was midweek, middle of a working week for those guys, not for us because we were on holiday, obviously. And we sang "Love Will Tear Us Apart" by Joy Division to a mostly empty bar. The two of us up on stage, which was a pretty surreal experience. And we overheard the people saying, "Is this how it's supposed to be sung?" It's and the other person went, "Yeah, this is how the song goes." So only me and him could pick one of the least crowd pleasing songs to ever do as karaoke. So quite a surreal experience, and we weren't even drunk. So there you go. Okay, so that will be it for this week. I hope putting up with me on my own wasn't too onerous an experience. It doesn't happen very often, but we wish our best and our love to Brad, who's had a challenging few days. Everyone's safe, that's the important thing. Just a few things going on in life that have caused ructions, as life tends to do for you occasionally. But in the meantime, follow all of our content on the socials, engage with us on YouTube. If you want to chat, feel free to join our Discord. But in the meantime, until next time, stay safe and stay sane.